Mission Impossible began life as a hit 1960s CBS television series, an ensemble spy drama created by Bruce Geller. By the early 1990s, Paramount Pictures had long wanted to adapt the property for the big screen, but previous attempts failed to find the right approach. Enter Tom Cruise, one of Hollywood's top stars at the time, who was a childhood fan of the show. After the success of The Firm, 1993, Cruise was looking for a franchise project to launch his new production company with producer Paula Wagner. Paramount, eager to keep its leading man in the fold, pitched Mission Impossible as a potential blockbuster vehicle for Cruise. Cruise embraced the idea, personally convincing the studio to finance a large-scale film adaptation. The budget ultimately landed around $60–70 million. From the outset, Cruise was not only the star, but also a hands-on producer. He enlisted A-list help to get the project off the ground. Academy Award-winning director Sidney Pollack was initially involved in developing the story with Cruise and Wagner, but it was director Brian De Palma who would ultimately helm the film. Cruise met De Palma, known for stylish thrillers like The Untouchables and Carrie, at a dinner with Steven Spielberg, after which Cruise binge-watched De Palma's filmography in a single night. Impressed, Cruise offered him the job, bringing on an auteur who was unafraid to shake up the classic TV material. De Palma later recalled his mindset in taking on Mission Impossible. "I was determined to make a huge hit," he admitted, indicating a willingness to depart from the show's traditions if it meant a more exciting movie. One dramatic departure was the decision to center the film almost entirely on Cruise's character and kill off the entire IMF team in the opening act. The original series was a true ensemble piece, a team of specialists led in later seasons by Jim Phelps, played by Peter Graves. In contrast, De Palma's film quickly wipes out Ethan Hunt's team in a Prague mission gone wrong, leaving him as the sole survivor. "I said the first thing we have to do is kill off the whole team," De Palma later remarked of his bold, scorched earth story choice. This shocking twist, including the gruesome demise of a character played by Emilio Estevez in an uncredited cameo, immediately raised the stakes and turned Mission Impossible into a one-man-against-the-odds thriller rather than an ensemble caper. It also set the stage for a controversial portrayal of Jim Phelps as the film's villain, a creative decision that upset many devotees of the TV show. Those associated with the original series were appalled by the film's treatment of the team. Actor Greg Morris, Barney on the show, walked out of the theater in disgust at how Phelps was depicted. Peter Graves was actually offered the chance to reprise his role as Jim Phelps, but turned it down upon learning Phelps would be revealed as a traitor and killed off. Instead, Oscar winner Jon Voight was cast as the iconic Phelps, now reimagined as a turncoat stealing a list of undercover agents for profit. Original star Martin Landau also voiced disapproval, arguing that the film had abandoned the spirit of the series. In a later interview, he noted that Mission Impossible missions were meant to be a mind game, where the team succeeds without the world knowing. By contrast, the film's emphasis on action and betrayal changed the whole texture. De Palma, however, did not worry about upsetting old fans. He set out to surprise the audience at every turn and keep Cruise's Ethan Hunt at center stage, a mandate both he and Cruise agreed on as key to making the movie a blockbuster. Screenwriting chaos and key creative figures. Developing the screenplay proved to be an impossible mission of its own at times. The script went through multiple drafts and writers before and during production. 2 early screenplay drafts no one liked were tossed out. De Palma then brought in heavyweight writers Steve Zaillian and David Koop to rework the story, followed by Academy Award winner Robert Towne for further rewrites. In fact, the film went into pre-production without a finalized script, an unusual situation for such a large project. De Palma focused on designing big action set pieces first, and tasked the writers with stringing a coherent plot around them. Towne was instrumental in creating a functional beginning, middle, and end structure, even as Koep and De Palma kept altering plot details. The goal of the script was to constantly surprise the audience, De Palma said, which explains the dizzying array of double crosses and mask disguises in the final film. Unsurprisingly, dialogue and story logic took a backseat to spectacle. Even during filming, scenes were being reworked and rewritten on the fly. In total, a small army of writers had a hand in the script, Legend has it that Chinatown's town was polishing one act while Coep rewrote another. This process resulted in a twisty plot that some found convoluted, merely serving to link together the standout action sequences. Casting the IMF and villains. As producer, Cruise also had a big say in casting the film's ensemble around him. For the crucial role of Jim Phelps, the veteran team leader who becomes the story's antagonist, the filmmakers sought a well-known actor to lend gravitas. After Peter Graves declined to participate, uncomfortable with the villainous twist for his character, Jon Voight was cast. Voight, an Academy Award winner, brought authority to Phelps and played him with a cynical edge that contrasted with Graves's clean-cut hero from the series. Opposite Voight, French actress Emmanuelle Béart was cast as Claire Phelps, Jim's wife and an IMF member who survives the opening massacre. Béart, known for art house films in France, made a rare foray into Hollywood with this role, adding international flavor to the cast. Her character's ambiguous loyalty added an extra layer of intrigue in the team's fractured dynamics. For Ethan Hunt's new ragtag team, assembled after his original crew is eliminated, the production chose an interesting mix of performers. Ving Rhames was cast as Luther Stickle, a skilled hacker who helps Ethan. Rhames's casting was notable because he didn't fit the stereotypical computer nerd image. He was a physically imposing, deep-voiced actor who had recently won acclaim in Pulp Fiction, 1994. Indeed, Rhames later said he believed he was chosen because De Palma wanted the hacker to be the toughest guy in the room, rather than a weakling, flipping a cliché on its head. Jean Reno, the French star of Léon, the Professional, 1994, came on board as Franz Krieger, a former pilot and IMF agent who handles the heist's more dangerous tasks, like flying a helicopter into a tunnel. The venerable Vanessa Redgrave rounded out the cast in a memorable turn as Max, an enigmatic arms dealer and covert buyer of the stolen NOC list. Though her screen time was brief, Redgrave's sly, flirtatious interplay with Cruise, as Ethan posing as a fellow criminal, became a highlight. Completing the supporting cast, character actor Henry Czerny played IMF director Eugene Kittredge with scene-stealing intensity. His early confrontation with Ethan in a Prague aquarium restaurant sets the plot in motion. Kristen Scott Thomas and Emilio Estevez appear as IMF agents in the doomed opening mission, giving the film a jolt of recognizability and adding shock value when their characters meet sudden, violent ends. This mix of American and European actors, acclaimed veterans and rising stars, gave Mission Impossible a cosmopolitan feel and helped sell the high-stakes espionage atmosphere. Filming locations and notable set pieces. Principal photography took place over 5 months, from March to August 1995, and spanned multiple countries. Prague, Czech Republic serves as the backdrop for the film's first act. In fact, Mission Impossible was one of the first major Hollywood movies set in post-Cold War Prague, showcasing its atmospheric Old Town Square and Charles Bridge in several key scenes. The production made ample use of real locations. The scene at the US Embassy in Prague, for example, was actually filmed at the historic Liechtenstein Palace, not an actual embassy building. Prague's cobblestone streets and Baroque architecture heighten the spy thriller vibe, especially during the tense sequence where Ethan's team is betrayed and eliminated during a nighttime operation. After the chaos in Prague, the story and production shifted to London, England. Ethan's safe house and covert meetups in London were filmed around the area of Liverpool Street Station. In fact, the filmmakers used an actual cafe inside Liverpool Street Station for a brief scene, lending authenticity as Ethan uses a public computer to reach out to arms dealer Max online. Many of the interior scenes in London, such as the safe house where Ethan assembles Luther and Krieger to plan the Langley heist, were shot on sound stages at Pinewood Studios in England, allowing careful control of lighting and layout. The mix of real locations and constructed sets gave Mission Impossible a global scale, while still accommodating Brian De Palma's precise visual style. During filming, De Palma worked closely with his cast to block out the intricate action and espionage sequences. Here, on a London soundstage, dressed as Ethan's safe house, Tom Cruise, seated, and co-stars Jean Reno, center, and Emmanuelle Béart, right, confer with director Brian De Palma, far right, on the scene's staging and prop details. Filming such dialogue-heavy suspense scenes in a controlled environment allowed De Palma to emphasize the character's mistrust and the story's twists. Production designer Norman Reynolds of Star Wars fame built detailed sets like the safe house full of spy gear and the CIA vault that gave De Palma's camera freedom to roam and capture the actors' performances from dramatic angles. In terms of cinematography, veteran director of photography Stephen H. Burham, a frequent De Palma collaborator, gave the film a sleek yet classical look, balancing high-tech imagery with old-school suspense techniques. For example, the famous CIA headquarters break-in sequence at Langley is shot in an all-white, brightly lit vault set that magnifies every movement and sound, a deliberate choice to ratchet up tension as Ethan Hunt must stay silent and motionless to avoid setting off alarms. De Palma's camera work and Burham's lighting turned this set piece into a masterclass of suspense, using wide shots to show the vast, gleaming vault and extreme close-ups, like a drop of sweat dangling from Ethan's brow, to underscore the razor-thin margin for error. The iconic stunts and special effects. Several iconic stunt sequences made Mission Impossible the talk of 1996. The first is the break-in at CIA headquarters, an utterly silent heist that has since become one of the franchise's signature scenes. To infiltrate an impossibly secure computer vault, Ethan Hunt is lowered from the ceiling on a cable, hovering inches above a pressure-sensitive floor. Filming this now famous sequence was a physical challenge for Cruise and the crew. Mission Impossible was shot before the days of ubiquitous CGI stunt doubles, so Cruise performed the dangling act himself on a rig. The vault set was constructed at Pinewood Studios and outfitted with numerous sensors and wires to create the illusion of a high-tech security system. In one of the film's most memorable behind-the-scenes moments, Tom Cruise and director Brian De Palma prepare to shoot the vault drop stunt. To capture Ethan Hunt's delicate suspension in one continuous take, Cruise had to hang face down, completely still, while the camera zoomed in, a task much easier said than done. Early attempts went awry. As Cruise later revealed, he kept losing balance and smacking his head on the floor when lowered to a full stop. Determined to get it right, Cruise came up with an improvised solution. He put a handful of British pound coins in his shoes as counterweights to keep his body perfectly level. The next take went off flawlessly. De Palma got the shot of Cruise spread-eagled in midair, hovering inches above the ground, with Ethan's outstretched glove catching a bead of sweat just in time, a detail the director added to amplify the suspense. The result is a taut, nail-biting scene that has been endlessly imitated and parodied, and it showcased Cruise's commitment to doing his own stunts for authenticity. Another standout set piece is the exploding aquarium restaurant in Prague. This scene comes early in the film when Ethan realizes he's been framed by his own agency. Surrounded by IMF agents in a sleek restaurant, fittingly named Aquarium, Ethan uses a last resort escape, blowing up giant tanks of water to cover his getaway. The production team actually built large fish tanks, holding around 16 tons of water in total, on set. When detonated, the cascading water and glass could have been extremely dangerous to anyone in the vicinity. Initially, a stunt double was used for the shot of Ethan fleeing as the water bursts out, but De Palma felt the result wasn't convincing. Tom Cruise, ever game, agreed to perform the stunt himself, despite the risk of injury or even drowning. The sequence was captured with high-speed cameras as Cruise leaps through a wall of water and shattering glass. De Palma even opted to show part of the explosion in slow motion, the sight of Ethan outrunning a tidal wave in a posh dining room, to emphasize its almost operatic flair. It's a brief moment in the film, but it required careful coordination between special effects crews triggering the blast, stunt riggers, and the cinematographer to get it in one take. The successful execution of the aquarium explosion gave Mission Impossible one of its signature images, widely used in trailers and marketing, and proved that practical effects still packed a punch. The most elaborate and expensive sequence was saved for the finale, the bullet train chase through the Channel Tunnel. This climactic action scene pulled out all the stops and was cutting edge for its time. In the film, Ethan chases Phelps onto the roof of a French TGV high-speed train, and their fight is interrupted by a pursuing helicopter, which eventually explodes spectacularly inside the tunnel. Pulling off this over-the-top sequence required a combination of practical stunt work, model miniatures, and then groundbreaking CGI led by industrial light and magic. Originally, Cruise wanted to film on France's real TGV train system for maximum realism, but the French rail authorities objected to a high-speed stunt shoot. Undeterred, Cruise personally met with the TGV's owners and persuaded them over dinner to let the production use a train and tracks. Still, for safety and visual control, most of the scene was ultimately filmed in England. Exterior shots of a train racing through the countryside were captured on a rail line in Scotland, and background plates of the approaching Channel Tunnel were also filmed on location. But the heart of the sequence took place at Pinewood Studios' 07 stage, where the crew constructed a full-size portion of the TGV train on a soundstage. To simulate the train's 200+ km/h speed, an enormous parachute fan wind machine, the only one of its kind in Europe, was brought in to blast the actors with 140-mile-per-hour winds. Cruise had insisted that the wind be powerful enough to physically peel off his face and almost blow him off the train to make the danger look real. On set, both Cruise and Voight performed on the roof of the stationary train against a blue screen, battling heavy wind. Harnesses and wires, later erased digitally, kept the actors safe when the gusts toppled them. In some shots, Cruise was deliberately yanked by cables to send him tumbling across the train roof. For instance, the moment Ethan is flipped onto his back by the wind and slides toward the end of the train was achieved by whipping Cruise along the 65-foot length of the set with a wire pull. All the live-action elements were then handed over to ILM for digital effects enhancement. Visual effects supervisor John Knoll oversaw roughly 150 visual effects shots for the 7-minute train finale. Using then state-of-the-art SGI computer workstations, ILM artists created CGI versions of the helicopter and train to integrate with the live footage. For the most part, whenever the film shows a wide shot of Ethan and Phelps on top of the speeding train or the helicopter chasing them, it's a blend of real actors against blue screen and a computer-generated background, or sometimes completely digital doubles in extreme long shot. The Channel Tunnel itself was realized with miniature models as well. ILM built an 8-foot diameter, 155-foot long replica of the tunnel and ran scaled model trains and helicopters through it, blowing them up repeatedly to capture the explosion from multiple angles. A new technique called projection mapping was used to make the rushing tunnel walls look convincing at high speed. The result is a frenetic climax that, while defying physics, delivers pure popcorn entertainment. De Palma fought hard to include this outrageous helicopter versus train climax over studio concerns about realism, and even Cruise initially had doubts, worrying it might be too implausible. But once they filmed it, Cruise was hooked, later pushing each mission impossible installment to outdo the last in stunt spectacle. The first film's finale, with Ethan vaulting from an exploding helicopter onto a speeding train, firmly established the series' reputation for inventive, go-for-broke action sequences. Despite the complexity of these set pieces, Mission Impossible wrapped production on time and under budget, which is rare for such an ambitious project. Much of that credit goes to the rigorous planning and Cruise's willingness to do multiple takes of difficult stunts without the need for expensive reshoots or effects fixes. In the end, De Palma had one more trick up his sleeve in post-production. He decided to open the film in media res with a tense interrogation scene, revealed to be a IMF team training exercise, rather than a planned prologue that explored a love triangle between Ethan, Claire, and Phelps. That earlier character development intro was cut after test screenings, on the advice of none other than George Lucas, who felt it was unnecessary and slowed the pace. This last-minute edit kept the film lean and propulsive, in the genre of spy action that De Palma and Cruise wanted. Another late change was the film's score. Composer Alan Silvestri had originally been hired and even recorded about 20 minutes of music, but during post-production, his work was replaced by a new score from Danny Elfman. Cruise, as producer, was reportedly behind this switch. Elfman's score incorporated Lalo Schifrin's iconic Mission Impossible TV theme, which U2's Larry Mullen Jr. and Adam Clayton also updated into a techno remix that became a hit single. These adjustments and refinements, while challenging, ultimately paid off by the time Mission Impossible hit theaters. Critical and commercial reception. When Mission Impossible was released on May 22, 1996, it quickly became an international smash. The film opened at a then-record 3,012 theaters in the US, grossing $11.8 million on its first day, the best Wednesday opening ever at the time. It went on to earn a massive $45.4 million over its first weekend, setting a new May opening weekend record, briefly surpassing the previous record holder, Twister. By the end of its theatrical run, Mission Impossible had topped $181 million in North America and $276.7 million overseas, for a worldwide total of about $457.7 million. This success established it as one of the highest-grossing films of 1996 and proved that Tom Cruise's gamble on a TV reboot had paid off in a big way. Notably, Cruise's decision to take a percentage of the gross instead of his normal salary turned out to be very lucrative, given the film's blockbuster performance. The movie's popularity also set the stage for an enduring franchise. Sequels followed in 2000 and beyond, each upping the ante on stunts and global scale. Critically, the reactions were more mixed. Some reviewers found the plot convoluted and the characters underdeveloped, while others praised the film's stylish set pieces and relentless pace. On Rotten Tomatoes, Mission Impossible holds around a 65% approval rating, with the consensus that it offers sweeping spectacle and impressive action, but a somewhat confusing narrative. Celebrated critic Roger Ebert gave it 3 out of 4 stars, noting that the movie exists in the instant. In other words, it's best enjoyed by not overthinking the twisty plot and simply savoring the suspense and visuals. Indeed, many applauded De Palma's direction. The famous CIA vault scene and the climactic chase were often cited as brilliantly executed sequences that kept viewers on the edge of their seats. The New York Times observed that the story doesn't make a shred of sense. So what? Acknowledging that the Mission Impossible TV series also prized gadgetry and surprise over plausibility. On the flip side, some critics wished for more substance. The Washington Post lamented the lack of personality and witty dialogue beneath the surface thrills, saying the film had empty thrills and was missing the human element that might have made it truly memorable. Still, even reviews on the fence often admitted the concoction goes down with ease, thanks to its brisk pacing and attractive cast. Fans of the original series were divided as well. As mentioned, several original cast members were unhappy with the film's choices. But a new generation of moviegoers came to know Mission Impossible purely as an adrenaline-fueled Tom Cruise spy franchise. Over time, the film's reputation has grown. It is now seen as a daring kickoff to what would become a flagship action series. Modern retrospectives credit De Palma's installment for its distinct tone, more of a suspenseful spy thriller compared to the later sequel's emphasis on high-flying stunt extravaganzas. In fact, the subsequent MI films became lighter and more self-aware, whereas the 1996 film retains a certain elegant, methodical style that cinephiles appreciated. As one journalist noted, none of the later chapters quite recapture the sheer cinematic chutzpah that De Palma brought, nor do they invite comparisons to Hitchcock the way the first film did. Nonetheless, the franchise evolved into a reliable crowd pleaser, with each sequel striving to top the previous one's action. And it all started with this 1996 production that dared to fuse old-school espionage with modern blockbuster spectacle. The making of Mission Impossible, 1996, was itself a high-wire act of ambition, risk, and creative problem-solving. From its inception as a reboot of a beloved TV series, through its tumultuous writing process and daring casting choices, to the groundbreaking stunts and effects that defined its production, The film's journey was anything but straightforward. Yet, under Brian De Palma's stylish direction and Tom Cruise's unwavering dedication, Mission Impossible managed to defy the odds and deliver a thriller that thrilled audiences around the world. It resurrected a classic property for a new age, gave Cruise a signature action hero in Ethan Hunt, and left an indelible mark with scenes like the CIA vault drop and the exploding helicopter on a train. Critically, it may not have been universally lauded, but its impact on pop culture and the action genre is undeniable. The film proved that a mix of practical filmmaking ingenuity and cutting-edge effects could create set pieces for the ages, and that audiences were more than willing to accept a new vision of Mission Impossible, even if it meant shedding some of the old rules. In the end, the 1996 film's success laid the foundation for an enduring franchise that nearly 3 decades later is still reinventing itself and pushing the limits of action cinema, a true mission accomplished for the team that made it.